Henry Wayne David was born in Willoughby, Illinois on March 25, 1964. During Henry's childhood, he was diagnosed with multiple personality disorder and paranoid schizophrenia, in which Henry spent most of his life in and out of psychiatric hospitals throughout Meridian County. After years of budget cuts and being forced out onto the streets after the psychiatric hospitals closed, Henry moved back home to the small quaint town of Willoughby, Illinois, where Henry would later unleash his madness upon 13 innocent people that were killed. The detective interview by Sergeant McDowell of the Willoughby Police Department was recorded and is being released to the general public to calm their fears. After the interview, the tapes were forwarded to Professor Xavier Grant and Dr. Laura Lanaria for their expert analysis of the psychopathic killer and determine why does evil exist. At this point, Henry Wayne David would be formally known as the Grinner.
Hello, Mr. David. My name is Detective Sergeant McDowell with the Willoughby Police Department. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a couple different events. Obviously, you were just taken into custody a short time ago, so I'm looking over your arrest report, and I do have some questions that I'd like to ask you. In the process of that, I am going to be recording this on tape. I'm today present with the subject identified as Henry Wayne David, the suspect identified as being involved in the murder of multiple persons within Meridian County. Mr. David, have you had your rights read to you, and do you understand these rights? We have reason to believe you've been involved with activities within our community and surrounding areas that concern your victims of homicide events. Are you aware of these events taking place? We found that you were released from a halfway house and took residence at your current location. All appear to be going quite well for you. You're living independently. You held down a job. You're a functioning member of society. What happened, Henry? We want to help you, Mr. David. We have evidence to support your involvement in the disappearance of several persons from the surrounding community. You're found by patrol officers pulling a deceased body inside a wrapped black bag, all while playing hopscotch on the sidewalk? Do you acknowledge this, Mr. David? Was that you that was doing this, Mr. David? When contact was made with you, we found that you had an axe and cadaver parts as part of your game. Do you remember using these items? We have reports of other activity involving circumstances that correlate to this type of activity. We have witnessed sightings of persons dressed as yourself been found with this outfit and mask that you are also wearing. In these other instances, we have a person described as yourself playing jump rope, which was later found to be rope made of human hair. Was that you playing jump rope with a winding of human hair used as a rope? We have evidence of you were using assorted limbs, hands, and feet from human corpses that were potentially hidden among the playground areas within our area. Witnesses state you're seen in the area prior to these finding of the items by citizens. Are you aware of body parts being hidden throughout playground areas in the community? Did you hide those remains in the parks? The remains were discovered to have been persons reported as missing in the Tri-County area. Are you involved with the disappearance of persons which tied to these remains, Mr. David? Mr. David, based upon our findings, it be noted that both your involvement in the activities aligns with both the disappearance of said victims, but you are the person responsible for the death of these individuals. At the moment, we have at least 13 persons identified as victims. You do know this, right? Why did you kill these persons? I mean, was there some sort of purpose behind this? Some sort of enjoyment? I mean, you're wearing this outfit, you have this crazy-looking mask. Do you get a thrill of killing, dismembering someone, using their remains in some sick game associated with childhood addicts? Why, Mr. David? Why?
Because I like to have fun.
You're found to be playing hopscotch with a dead body inside a bag. You're seen playing jump rope with a rope made of human hair. You're seen inside area parks appearing to be rummaging, and then later remains of missing persons that were found. You hunted, killed, and then hid the remains as if you're playing a game of hide and seek. Why in God's earth would you do this? Is there something wrong with you, Mr. David? What the hell is wrong with you?
It was noted during the interview process of Mr. David, he liked to travel the alleyways and with one of his victims in a black trash bag wrapped in yellow caution tape.
I just have a hard time understanding, Mr. David. You were counting on your hand. What exactly were you counting? Were you counting the bodies of the deceased? You mentioned something to the arresting officer about playing tag. You mentioned something about you wanted to play tag with him. What exactly did you mean by that?
I like to have fun.
What is this about you wanting to be a monster? It says here that you wanted them to play tag with you, but as long as you get to be the monster chasing. It's stated by the arresting officer, I always like to be the monster, that's your favorite. Are you a monster, Mr. David?
While Henry Wayne David was awaiting trial in Meridian County Jail, Henry took drawing as a way to release his inner anger. These drawings would be used in court to help determine Mr. David's mental state. These drawings would then be forwarded to Professor Xavier Grant and Dr. Laura Linaria to help them determine why does evil exist.
The tape that we received recently from our detective colleague in the Meridian County Police Department contains the interview and interrogation of a demented individual suspected to be responsible for the carnage enacted upon innocent residents of the area.
Based upon the taped interview, it appears that we are dealing with a sociopath who has no regard for human life. We can even state, based upon evidence collected, that the subject took a prodigious amount of joy in executing his actions.
In addition to the interview tape and our own research into this disturbing case, we were able to add yet another chapter to our study into the question of why does evil exist?
After an extensive evaluation, Henry was diagnosed with multiple personality disorder as well as schizophrenia. He also suffered with psychotic fantasies. Upon recommendation by the professionals involved, it was agreed that Henry would be better served if he was admitted to the county psychiatric institution on the outskirts of town. Upon Henry's release from his temporary home, he was given a strict drug regimen to follow which would keep his psychotic tendencies in check and allow him to function within society. For the first 6 months of his newfound freedom, Henry did well, staying on his medications, rebuilding his life, and staying in contact with his caseworker. He found a job in an apartment and was ultimately released from care.
Unfortunately, without supervision, Henry failed to take his medications as prescribed. He began to devolve into having psychotic fantasies. He became obsessed with slasher films that were popular at the time, graphic films with titles such as Cannibal Ecstasy, Slaughtertown, and the film that we feel may have had strong influences on his later deeds, The Axeman of Bergen County.
Henry would sit for hours, glued to his television set, intently watching these grisly, gory slaughter films. He would take notes while watching these films, detailing the manner of the killings. He built an extensive collection of serial killer books, of which he would cross-reference what he saw on screen and what he read in his books, melding fantasy with reality.
His heroes became the popular serial killers of the time, the likes of psychopaths such as Ted Bundy, Edmund Kemper, and Dean Allen Corll.
At the end of his reign of terror, his body count was not as high as some of his protégés. However, the sheer abomination of his crimes remains unequaled in the annals of heinous crimes.
Why does evil exist? While this case sheds light on the underlying circumstances revolving around the development of the subject into an abhorrent killer, there is nothing that suggests a primary reason. Mental illness most certainly played a part in the subject's later actions. In this case, based upon our investigations, multiple factors came into play in constructing one of the most accursed serial killers in modern history.
This is Wild Future Production.